Then, fam, have you noticed in the press recently there's been a lot of talk about in a couple of years' time, round about the start of a next generation, so Gen 10, that Xbox might leave console making behind entirely and go completely over to sticks? I mean, they've already had a partnership put in place with Amazon and the Fire Stick. So then you can play Xbox games through a Fire Stick with your controller. And if they stop making consoles, will they stop making Xbox controllers? Because if you have a Fire Stick, then you can use any controller you like. Use a PlayStation controller. I'm sure that would horrify some Xbox. You could use a controller from the Google Stadia if you wanted, because those were unlocked by Google, so you could use them with anything you like, PCs, Steam Decks, whatever have you. So the options are open. So with that in case, does that then mean that either A, Sony might stop making controllers, Nintendo might stop making controllers? I don't see Nintendo moving away from controllers because their controllers are different to everybody else's. I mean, if you buy a controller for a PC to play games, if you want to be a PC player that plays games with a controller instead of a mouse and keyboard, you buy something that's very much in the current model of operation. You know, with your face buttons, your shoulder keys, your sticks, and your handles. The handles can vary in size and length and depth and width and blah blah blah. But largely speaking, aside from Nintendo, a controller's a controller's a controller. Yes, okay, you could talk about the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, which is more in the classic model of what we recognise to be a modern controller, but by and large, Nintendo does like to play different. May I draw your attention to the last three consoles? Yeah. So with that in mind, does that mean that we could see a shift in how controllers are designed? Will there be a lot more uniformity? Or, what more worrying still, because Microsoft are potentially, if numbers don't increase for Game Pass and so on and so forth, potentially, that could mean that, we just don't get controllers anymore, because there's a showing and a growing indication that a lot of younger gamers coming up, aside from the fact that a lot of them are coming up to be console agnostic, which in itself, largely speaking, is a good thing, it also means that a lot of them, when you hand them one controller, they go, this controller is different to the controller I was using over here, and this controller is different to the one I was using over there, and all these controllers are different. I'll just go play on my phone. And considering that phone games are getting more and more powerful now, I don't know if a phone game is ever going to match something that we do on a PlayStation 5 and potential PlayStation 6, and of course the Xbox Series X, and if indeed Microsoft do make another console in a couple of years, and by no means is that a guarantee, and also whatever Nintendo decides next, does that mean we could have some sort of uni controller that could be everywhere? But then it also has to be accessible to the younger market who go like, well, there's an X button over here, over here there's an X button over here, and over here there isn't even an X button. It's like, there's going to be a need for, how can I put this, cross-platform, cross-generational, and I don't mean console generational, I mean human generational divides. So behind me, you'll see what a lot of people are probably thinking is going to be the next step. Now, we've seen with the PlayStation Portal, that what you basically have is a long tablet-like screen with a DualSense basically cut in half and glued on either side. Now that's a crude way of putting it, but that's basically, when you get down to brass tacks, what the PlayStation Portable is. Aside from the fact it also doesn't have any games of its own, it's basically slaves to the PlayStation 5. Which is all well and good because apparently it's selling quite nicely. Which is to the point where there are videos online where there are people fixing broken ones. Where the guy going, I've got 7 PlayStation Portables and they're all broken, let's see if I can fix them. You know the kind of videos. Those videos have been a bit forever. We even had those videos back in the days of the PlayStation 3. I mean, I remember the old Smash My PlayStation 3 videos with guys getting them on the launch event. The guy coming up, he bought it just there and then, and he puts it in the middle of a square in New York and starts going at it with a lump hammer. And the boy comes up going, can I have the controller? Yeah, I remember that. Oh, man. Anyway. So, if you've got that model that I showed previously with basically it's like a smartphone but with controller bits on the side. Now that's a good place to start. However, we moved away from flat style controllers back from the SNES and the Mega Drive. The Mega Drive is a little bit not quite so flat, but as we've moved forward over the years, we've gotten controllers that are more ergonomically designed for the human hand. Because, well, humans play video games. So, here is what I think is a probable next step. So, where you see the darkened area on the lower image and on the bigger image is basically flexible, moldable OLED. OLED screens, aside from the fact that they can be molded and shaped and cut any desired shape, and they do have a level of flexibility, they're also capacitive. And for the smartphone youth who know nothing else but smartphones, this could be the very thing. Now, I've got the same sketch here that I did earlier before this. So imagine this, you've got your controller. This area here is obviously the back. So these two parts of the screen, these two nodules, are basically going to be the shoulder keys, if indeed you want them. They could be something else. They could maybe be an accelerator for like a driving game. And instead of holding the accelerator down and having different levels of depression through note acceleration or deceleration or holding a middle speed, maybe you would hold your finger and slide your finger up and down said pad. This part of the screen to actually increase or decrease the level of acceleration. Obviously on the big one, kind of hard to keep this mirror image, you can have any button layout you like. So you can have an Xbox button layout, you can have a PlayStation button layout, you can have a custom button layout. You can have the buttons be quite big, you can have them be in a line, you can have them be in a triangle, you can have them be in a circle. Whatever you like, you can have them in a crescent shape. You can even have the buttons on the other side. You could be left-handed, and for you maybe having the face buttons on one side of the controller could actually be a disadvantage. You could put them on the other side and put the D-pad, if indeed there's ever need for a D-pad ever again, anywhere you like on this screen. In fact, the screen itself could have anything you like. So you could have like a mock steering wheel in the middle, and you would basically have your thumbs on the controller, and you could turn the steering wheel with your two thumbs. Now, it'd be kind of a small steering wheel, but that's never stopped gamers in the past, has it? So there could be this idea for this mock for this sort of screen-based dual sense shaped controller with no physical controls. Now, older gamers like me and a lot of you out there in the Zen fam will be looking at this thing and going, yeah, but I like the tactile nature. I like knowing when I tap the button, I've tapped the button. And of course, the other thing of a controller like this is it'll eat battery. But on the flip side of that, a controller like this, from my imagination, so if this comes out and this happens, or something very similar to this happens, this video is up as evidence. I want some money if it develops. Okay, I had this idea. Patent pending. But the thing is, with this, you'll never have to worry about stick drift. There are no sticks. The sticks should be virtual. Now, obviously, they'd have to be really well programmed. The tracking software for your fingers and thumbs would have to be top notch. However, it does mean no more stick drift. No more X button that gets worn out and then you have to send your controller in to get repaired or buy a new one. So as long as they can figure out the battery, in fact, if anything, there's probably going to be more room for battery if there's less space being taken up by mechanical bits such as the housing and gubbins for the sticks. Never mind all these little circuit boards and stuff and all the soldering and all the rest of it that goes into actually making the buttons work, making the triggers work, making the D-pad work. If it's all just a screen, then much more of it could actually be set aside for haptic motors and battery. So we could end up with something, although it would take a bit of getting used to, has actually got a bit more flexibility. It could mean that games could have much more specific controls. You wouldn't have to have, something like an action world open world game where you have to hold one button and then control another thing to make it do a thing, or have buttons that only work in one scenario and then when you're outside that scenario the button does a different thing. It could change on the fly. It could be that when you're in the driving section of a game, the controls revert to driving mode. When you're in the walking section of the game or the shooting section of the game, they could revert to that. And while you're putting the inputs in, the input of getting out of the car automatically changes the layout of the controller. It could allow for much more flexible and immersive control of game. But as I specified, it's going to take some getting used to. Because as we all know, whenever we've played phones games, or games on phones, if I could get words out correctly, that there's always that feeling that, are you really doing it? It feels a bit slidey. So maybe there could be, maybe a slight texture, not roughness, but like a texture to the glass, some sort of overlay perhaps on the flexible OLED. In fact, it could even be the case, because the OLED is flexible, that maybe you could depress parts of it, in places that there could be like a whole sort of touch area underneath it that feels the depression of the human finger. If you give it a bit of a press, maybe you could sense that rather than relying entirely on capacitive touch. You could also sense it for some games that need to have a sense of the actual physical contact, like fighting games. You would definitely do well to have, some sort of swoosh sensor underneath the flexible OLED screen of a controller like this. The more I talk about this, the more I think this is a possibility. Obviously, I would love your input down below, so typey down below, let Zenbloke know. I'd be really interested to know what you think on something like this, and please Share this with your pals. Get people involved in the conversation. And if you're a fellow gaming YouTube content creator, or even if you're a technology channel, then please make a response video. Come back to me. Tell me, how much I'm off my rocker about this, or maybe I'm absolutely spot on. Who knows? But I think that this, or something very much like this, is quite possibly our future as gamers. If indeed games have a future. And with that, hashtag support Scottish YouTubers, and of course, as always, I, nae bother.